Today on the Edged Mindset channel, we're going to do something I have never done before. What is going on, guys? Carter here. We're going to be taking a look at this Medford Praetorian Ti, but we're not just taking a look at it. I'm going to do a full review on this ridiculous knife and really treat it like a knife, right? I'm going to review this knife. Now, you may say, how is that different? You've featured Praetorian Tis before. You've featured Medford knives before. This is true. But I've always done it through the lens of an art piece, of an art knife, right? I talk about how it looks. I talk about why I think it's cool. But I've never really reviewed one as a knife. So I'm going to attempt to do that today. Now, I'm still going to talk about the things I like about it. I'm going to talk about the finish and different things and kind of that certain Medford feel. But I'm also going to evaluate it as a knife. Should you buy something like this? Should you fork out the high cost for something like this and actually carry and use it or collect it or whatever the case may be? So let's try it. I've never done it before. We're going to give it a shot. Let's start with the usual spot, right? Start at the beginning. Specs. Let's talk specs. And, we all know the elephant in the room, and that's going to be the weight. That's the big question mark right there. How heavy is this monster? Can you actually put this in your pocket? But first, let's do some lengths and some comparisons here. You could call this 4 inches, depending on where you're counting it from, 3 3/4, 4 inches. I like to say 4 inches, kind of the top of this pivot here for the most part, but big blade, big blade, 8 3/4 inches overall. Now, I will say, the first time I had a Praetorian Ti, I actually thought it was going to be bigger. I know, that's what she said. I really did, because I'd heard so much about these knives, how insanely overbuilt they are, how insanely thick they are, and that's true. But I was actually expecting it to be larger. I really thought it was like a 4.5-inch blade, something like that. This is no slouch. 4-inch blade, almost 9 inches, depending on where you're counting from. I guess 9 inches to the end of the glass breaker here. Very big knife, but I thought it was going to be bigger. So I was a little bit pleasantly surprised the first time I held one of these things. Look how thick this stock is. I believe it's nearly 1/4 inch thick, or exactly 1/4 inch thick. Very, very thick blade stock. Overall thickness on the handle here, it's over 1/2 inch, 5/8 inches. It looks like, I guess it depends on the sculpting. If you take it from one of the high peaks of the sculpting, it's a little bit bigger than that. And I think the unsculpted version is a little bit thicker, right? They've removed some material to do this sculpting here, but it's around that thickness. Let's do a comparison to the usual, which is a Paramilitary 2. Just kidding, this is a 3. I know you were like, wait a minute, that's way off. No, this is a 3. Just a little bit of paramilitary jokes for you there. Here's a Para 2 comparison. As you can see, right? Like, am I crazy? If you're not familiar with the Praetorian Ti, would you not think it would be bigger compared to a Paramilitary 2? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just, I just had a different opinion, the myth of the Praetorian Ti. But before I handled one, I think about 1.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, something like that, I thought it was going to be massively bigger than like a Paramilitary 2. It is bigger, obviously, but not that much bigger, or at least not to the degree that I was expecting. You can see the thickness there. It is just crazy, And of course, we're going to talk about weight here. Now, this one will weigh slightly less with the sculpting than the full version, 11.6 ounces. This is like a 5th pocket carry for sure. Like, just kind of throw it in there. You won't even notice it. Play a little pickleball, 3.6 ounces on this. Play a little pickleball with this in your pocket. You just got to be careful when you take your shorts off to wash them that you don't forget it's in your pocket and throw it in the washing machine. I kid. This one's rocking S45 VN steel, which is fine. I've heard mixed things about Medford's heat treat. I think they went through a little bit of a rough patch where they were kind of heat treating it a little bit low. I think they've improved that recently. It's still on the lower-ish side, but not too crazy. They kind of tout the whole, they want the knife to be easy to sharpen. They want it to not snap and break, which, you're handling that with the thickness and the blade grind. You don't need the steel to do that too. That is a pet peeve I have with Medford, not only running it kind of soft, but also just not running the steel to its designated spot, right? They'll do like Magna Cut, but they're not running Magna Cut where it should be ran, and they say why they do that. But to me, run the steel at the recommended HRC, or just pick a steel that has the properties you want when you run it at that HRC. If that makes sense. Like if you like 154 cm because of how it's not very hard and it's not going to break, cool, run it at its designated HRC, how it should be heat treated, but don't do Magna Cut and make it perform like 154 cm by adjusting the heat treat. Just don't do Magna Cut then, right? It seems like it's one of those things where they have a certain idea of how they want the steel to perform, but they also want the clickbait of using the latest, greatest steels, and so they augment those steels to make it perform. Anyways, I'm done. I'm done talking about that, but you know what I mean. Tanto blade on this one. It's not my favorite blade shape on the Praetorians. I prefer the drop point. I think it's more useful, and I think it just looks better with the handle. I don't know how you all feel. If you like this kind of classic tanto, this is what started the whole Praetorian movement right here. You've got a ball cut fuller right here. It gives you measured opening control. You can't flick it open. You can't do it quickly. You kind of have to be measured in how you open it because you've got to apply the right amount of pressure so that you don't slip off when trying to open this knife. You can't reverse flick. You can't front flip. It is a slow roll open only. The action, though, is something else. It's got a really smooth hydraulic type feel. It's got a lot of auditory feedback on this knife, and I love it. When this locks open, you get that thunk, that snap. I really appreciate it. To me, it's similar to fidget factor, right? It's just a different type of fidget factor. It's a more auditory fidget factor, and it's a more smooth hydraulic fidget factor than snappy, flicky type stuff. Really like that. Let's get back to the blade. I'm getting ahead of myself. So back to the blade. We've got a hollow grind right here, not terribly deep, very short, right? Very short grinds on here. It is massively thick behind the edge. You're cutting very little with this blade. Very little. I mean, it does have an edge, and this edge is sharp. You can shave hair with this edge, but this is not going to slice through material very well at all. This really is the true definition of a folding pry bar. Now, I'm not saying that necessarily is a dig. It is what it is, right? A lot of knives in the overbuilt arena are literally purpose-built for being a multi-tool, right? It's meant to dig things out with that tip. It's meant to potentially drill a little hole with that tip. It's meant to do chopping. It's meant to pry things open, right? So it is not the best cutter. And I know that's weird, right? Because you're like, it's a knife, it should be cutter first. But that was the whole kind of point of this overbuilt thing, was to say, can a knife be something else, right? So this is a way better cutter, way better slicer. I mean, look at this. Much, much nicer. You got this nice sharp point right here for digging out splinters or something like that. However, you really can't pry with this. You really can't dig into material with this. It is only a cutter. This can be used for other purposes. Now, that being said, is that something you need? Is that something an average person needs? Probably not. First responders, military, adventurers, maybe regular folks that live in the suburbs and need a knife to cut things and open packages, probably not. But if this gets your heart racing, if you think it's cool, then it's totally, totally worth it. This jimping is out of control. It is really aggressive and really cool. I like it. I don't know. I like it. I like the aesthetics. Function-wise, it works as well as any other well-cut jimping. You're really kind of like digging into one jimp. Like, it's like you only need one jimp to get that purchase, which is kind of an interesting feeling. You're used to jimping being like a bunch of little cuts that kind of you don't really notice where your thumb is. On this one, you're kind of like, oh, I like this first jimp. This is the one I use. Or I've got a longer thumb, so I use this second jimp. So it's kind of just a different thing. The only downside to it is, it can get caught on things, pockets, stuff like that. But, it's kind of up to you to decide if you like that or not. Let's do, we're talking frame lock here. It is titanium, really thick titanium. It adds so much weight. I mean, that's kind of the thing here. Even if you subscribe to the overbuilt pry bar type thing, having some potential use for certain people, the weight of this thing nearly prohibits it. I mean, this is, if you're backpacking, this isn't weight that you even really want to throw into your backpack. I mean, if you are a first responder, military, you're dealing with enough weight. I doubt you would want to carry this as well, but I don't know. Maybe you do. Maybe you like that extra weight. Maybe with what you are hauling around, it's not too much of a bother. Beautiful sculpting on this. This has kind of that Mad Max apocalyptic thing. This is the Predator sculpt, modified Predator sculpt with Scorched Earth Finish over the top of it. So it's meant to look like a Fallout, nuclear. I can never say that word. Blast occurred, and then you find this thing in some radiation filled crater or something like that. PVD coated hardware, good. Medford does really good on their PVD. It's very, very tough. I think they're using Armalube or something similar to that. Very nice. Some of the best PVD finishes in terms of strength and wear resistance I've ever experienced. Huge pocket clip. It actually works really well. It goes in and out of the pocket very, very well. But it is a big, insignia that you've got something in your pocket there. So that's up to you to decide if you really like that or not. You do have some sharp edges for the sake of having a logo there. It's not practical, but not too impeding. I've never ran into issues. I've carried a few Praetorian ties in my day. This does have an over travel. You just can't really see it because it's underneath this right here. Some of the earlier ones did not have that. This one does. Really strong construction, multi-pillar with screws coming in on both sides, right? None of this is floating or anything like that. Huge glass breaker with screws going through that. The build quality on Medford's always impresses me. The centering, how tight everything fits together. Zero play in any direction. No wiggle, no flex, nothing. Not that I would ever expect a lock bar of this size to flex. No issues there. Smooth action, no lock stick because they carbonize their lock face. So that's how they get around that. There is just something cool about this knife to me. I know these kind of knives aren't really in vogue right now. Not everybody's favorite thing. But there's just something about a giant chunk of all metal knife that just gets me. It's just so far removed from something like this. And this is closer to the knives that I kind of grew up with. I'm not saying this exact knife, but plastic, metal, lightweight. I don't want to say flimsy. This is for its weight, this is a fine knife in terms of strength, but this was just something different. When these knives came out, it was something different. So I've always got like a soft spot for these ridiculous knives. However, logic always kind of comes back around with these. And I'm like, why do I have this? Like, this is not a knife I would ever throw in my pocket to go to the movie theater unless I'm specifically trying to take photos or something of it. It's just so heavy and cumbersome. It's not too bad in like jeans, but it's a lot of weight. So really what it comes down to, is it a practical knife? No, not at all. Can it cut? Yes, kind of. Can it do other things? Absolutely. You can use this for a hammer, pry bar, all kinds of stuff. If it puts a smile on your face, get it, carry it, enjoy it. But otherwise, I would not recommend this as a general knife for regular people to own and carry. All right, guys, that's it. That is my attempt at a real review on a ridiculous knife from Medford. The Praetorian Ti, full thickness, sculpted out, Vulcan blade finish, full 9 yards. Comment down below, what did you think of this review? What do you think of Medford Praetorian Tis? Have you ever owned one? Do you ever want to own one? Comment down below. Couldn't do this without you. Catch you on the next video. See ya.